Okay.
All right. Thanks everyone for being here tonight. I'll call this meeting to order at 6:07 p.m. Um, any changes to the agenda? Hearing and seeing none, we'll move on to the first item of business, which is the administrative reports. A link to the secretary's report from our last meeting, our April 8th meeting, was in the agenda. I would entertain a motion to approve that the April 8th, 2025 meeting minutes as written. Thank you, Steve. Do I have a second? Thank you, Bonnie. Any corrections or edits? They look pretty good to me. Hearing and seeing none, we have a motion by Steve, a second by Bonnie to approve the April 8th meeting minutes. All those in favor, raise your hand or say aye. Thank you, Jim. Any opposed and any abstentions? And you're abstaining, so motion passes. Thank you. Thank you to Anessa for being here tonight, and Sue Westa too. So we have two things that I think Anessa will help us walk through, which is the quarterly financial review. And again, the link to the finance committee meeting minutes were in the agenda. I hope everyone was able to access them. So I will turn this over to you, Anessa. Really, my thought is that we should be reviewing our quarterly financials as a, as the executive board. I know the finance committee does it as well, but I just wanted to make sure we're also aware. So I will turn that over to you, and Anne, if as treasurer, if you have comments, go right ahead.
Hey. Thank you, Gabby. Thank you, everybody. So our financial report from January 1st to March 31st, 2025, which represents our second quarter of the fiscal year, ended pretty well with, difficulties in different ways the federal government was acting at the end of March. It did not really affect our operations. We were still and are still able to draw some appropriate funding from EPA sites. So projects were going smoothly, and with Sue's direction, we were reimbursing and paying our vendors. So that went well. So overall, the cash balance at the end of March was at 411,500, and everything is, of course, reconciled by now. We have, just a reminder, we have a sweep account, and so we maintain 2,500 in our checking account, and a sweep happens overnight. So that is very everything is working well. We bring about $300 of interest per month, so that is a good income. And through our financial committee, we had the direction sort of start thinking about how do we appropriate that extra income that we have. So it's still in a small amount, so we don't really worry about right now, but we will be thinking about it maybe by the end of this fiscal year. We started with this sweep account at the end of September 2024. So that's that. Income-wise, in the income side, we had an uptick in brownfield services, in hazard mitigation planning. We closed for 2 towns, and overall the municipal services were, compared to the last quarter, were up by 65%, so which is good. For the quarter, for the income, we are at 59% at the end of the quarter, so that represents 6 months of our in our fiscal year. If no questions for the income, I'll move on to expenditures. The main point we need to point it out is that we purchased a few laptops and desktops, again, due to tariffs and all that politics. So we expended a little over $11,000. And mostly the biggest was the Jeff's and Lisa's computers. Jeff's is the most because he handles all the mapping and GIS softwares were very expensive. So that's that. Of course, we maneuver between our expenditure buckets to cover that expense because we blew over our budget, of course, for the equipment. Overall, the quarter for the expenses, we ended up at 53%. We received our last big payment for the main state grant, ACCD. So we will have a little bit like a 5% of retainer receiving a little bit later in the summer. So that cash, is helpful. I was reconciling bank statement today for April, and we were at a little over 500,000. So cash wise, we're good, we're healthy. Of course, we have to live through another 4 months or some 4.5 months with that. So that's the quarter. If anybody has any questions. Collections doing well. TPI, transportation planning caught up with payments. So we're good pretty much in everything.
Yeah, I've mentioned this before, but staff have been directed at the end of each month, especially to top priority is to get the invoicing, reporting, and everything else done so that we can keep that momentum going. And they've been fantastic about it. So really, really happy about that. Because right now, we just don't know if, especially with all the layoffs and rescission, or not rescission, but just all the changes in personnel. It's not only a matter of the Fed's potentially holding funding, but actually having people there to process invoices and cut the checks. So that's so staff understand the reasoning behind that.
Right. Yeah, everybody responded pretty well for those efforts.
Yep. Stephen?
Did you purchase all the laptops and desktops that you needed, or did you stop at a certain point?
No, we did a great estimate. Jeff is maintaining all the agent and inventory for everybody. So we were in discussion for quite some time, go into this expense or not. So we took, made the decision just to purchase because some of them, Lisa's was 8 years old or something like that, 9 years old. His was, I don't remember now, 5, whatever, was, getting there.
Yeah, they were all basically, as I mentioned at the last exec board, they're all basically gonna have to be replaced next year. So we wanted to get ahead of the cost increases and also just get ahead of any potential decrease in revenue in the coming years. And so appreciate y'all letting us go ahead, advising to go ahead and make that.
Yeah.
So we're totally caught up now. Servers, backup, everything. So
Right.
last year we replaced the plot. It was last year, right? And that's where we replaced the plotter. So we should be good to go on everything.
All right, this all sounds good. Any other questions on the quarterly review of finances? All right, thanks, Anessa. I'll move right on along to our review and acceptance of the FY24 audit. And that was included in the PDF of our meeting packet with the agenda.
So it's a big file, close to 50 pages. And what mostly represents a big chunk of it is the way they have to state everything about our pension with the state pension. So there is a lot of calculations and statistics and all that stuff. If you're interested, that's a read, but mostly you don't have to. They start with a couple of letters. Basically, they're stating, how they approach, what's the professional's standards, what they're looking for. And then they just described, so basically you have to kind of read between the lines and find, if they found any kind of findings. So when they state some kind of professional standard, they mention what they found according to that statement in our books. Everything is, you know, smooth, went smooth. There's no any kind of misstatements, or, you know, they didn't find anything basically. So I worked with a different person again. He was involved before, but now he was a lead. And it's a, you know, little bit different approach, especially to how they book the revolving loan funds, because there's loans coming through, and how do we record the principal and the interest. So he showed me some things how to do, you know, deal with that we will come to the same bottom lines at the end of the year, stuff like that. So, but mostly they went, you know, everything electronically is just amazing. They have a portal, I submit everything and they go through, and there's no question asked. So they're very independent from me. They do their work they're supposed to. So if you have audit in front of you, I would ask you to scroll through these letters, and then you will come to their sort of observation of comparison from one year to the other. There's percentages given, and, you know, I'm scrolling.
Can you just say what page of the report? it is?
Yeah. So we have table 1 on page
And that's, do you want to share your screen?
17. Yeah, I can try that. I think I'm able to, right?
If not, I'll make you, let's see.
I think I'm a
Share your co-host, yep.
Yeah, co-host. All right. You guys see it? See the table?
Yes.
Okay, because I have 2 monitors. All right, so table 1, that's where they compare 1 year to the other. And so there's some increase in a net position. Then they talk about it. So in details, they say what increased and what decreased. So I don't know, I'm not really interested in that. It's basically analytical part. So what I would like to start with is this statement. So we start with statement A, where they list balance sheet, where they list every the general fund and the revolving loan fund. So it's called governmental activities. So it's all together. So cash here represents in our general account, general fund account, operation account, and the RLF. This so some information pertains to RLF is here as well. This interest that was created somewhere. Receivable. Okay, so as I mentioned, they pointed out and work a lot on a pension, and they put that in our books over here. So they say that it is our liability and it comes in and out. Here's a liability. I try to work with them on that just to understand that it's not our liability, it's through the state, but that's how the standards are. That's how they have to state. So there it is, in and out.
Are there any questions about that? Okay.
Statement B, sort of a place where everything before and after lands and shows us. So how they group this expenses and services and revenue, I don't have that information. I asked them, they say they don't do that. So how they arrive to this, it's up to them. So basically they're saying that in town and general, regional planning expenses exceeded revenue by 79,000. So then they add to it town assessment revenue, loan principal, which comes from RLF, interest comes from RLF, some miscellaneous, and this is our change in our net position, which is a positive number. So basically, this is our net profit in the governmental funding for both funds. Then we are going to balance sheet where they divide the general fund and revolving fund. So we see that total of the cash was right above statement. There it is. And then they say that we have cash, then we have accounts receivable at the end of the year. That's how much it was, basically because of the ACCD, the state fiscal year does not line up with our fiscal year, so they prepay us, and there's a big receivable sits, but then they pay it eventually. It's just timing. So that's that. And then we'll go to profit and loss. Oh, a little bit of details on balance sheet. And here's the profit and loss. And they say that we were 119,000 positive. So our revenue at 1.7 and our expenses are 1.6. So that's that. Again, that's how they separate this. It's up to them how they do that. Any questions on this page?
When you
Yeah.
when you say it's up to them, they're using some kind of accounting standards, I assume, but it's not what you're using in keeping the books. Why would we listen to them more than to you?
Because they have to be independent from us. So my work is my work. That's how I do it. That's how I book it. That's how I record it. And they come in and say, well, for this standards, for this practice, for this industry, we have to shift around things and do it like this, basically. So,
In a funny sort of way, it seems extremely arbitrary.
well, I go by them because they know what they're doing.
Well, when they're arbitrary, I don't feel comfortable that they know what they're doing.
Well, Stephen, I wouldn't call it arbitrary. They're following accounting standards that
Right.
auditors are certified accountants and auditors are required to follow.
Right.
And the point is that the other thing about an audit is if standards have changed, we are to also, they'll recommend changes to our accounting procedures to be consistent with it's pronounced GATSB, right? The generally accepted accounting procedures for government or something like that. So it's not arbitrary. It's just they're following basically the required standards that they're required to follow that evolve over time, and so that's part of the whole give and take. Give and take is the wrong word, but part of it is also ultimately advising on any changes we need to make to our procedures to be consistent with theirs. Is that a fair summary?
Right.
And I'll also turn to Gabby because she's now a finance manager.
Right. And what I'm looking for is stability and consistency. So there's nothing sticks out, nothing is missing. So everything is exactly the same from one year to the other. So that's what I'm looking for. They're presenting us, they're putting us into the standard for our industry. So if it's a government, it's a fund accounting. So we have to have these funds And that's what they're doing. They're breaking it up. So if it's salary, so this is probably Sue's salary that she spent on RLF, and we took it from RLF. So that's where it's shown. You know, we spent some, I don't know where this $10 coming from, but whatever. They stuck this thing here. So I'm not gonna, it's immaterial, $10. I'm not gonna be asking questions like that. So
Yeah, I'd just say, Stephen, that they're following GASB, right? They're just presenting it in a very specific standardized way that they are required to do.
mhm.
And so it's going to be slightly different presentation from our books. I think, you know, and that's totally fine and totally expected.
Yeah, and mostly it's timing. You know, if we build out revenue for prior year, but we received in the next year, so they want to back it up into, you know, recognize it in the proper year. So there will be journal entry presented to me, hey, book it this way, that next year we will be starting from this with the same, you know, beginning at the same sort of point. So yeah, pretty much straightforward. So I'll just move on very quickly. We have, again, there's a little calculations here. And that, so mostly, the most important is the notes. So that's where they explaining all their calculation. Here's your gap, and here are your GASP. You know, all the abbreviations are here. They say how it's supposed to be done, and they're following by that. And then they explain sufficiency, and they explain, you know, what is governmental accounting. So they basically setting up this, you know, benchmarks and how we fit to it. We're accrual, they look at us as a modified accrual. So they're just explaining the language, how they approach us. So I think the last page I would like to point it out is how we did against the budget for the year. Somewhere here, the very last, right here. Schedule 1. So they have too many columns. You know, we have original, and then we have what happened to reality, the actual, right? I don't know, the final column for the final, it's the same as original, so just ignore that. So also it's interesting how they pointed out that revenue allowance I can't highlight it, the very last year is 20,000, right? But then it didn't happen here, so it's 20,000 plus. So it kind of doesn't make sense in the differences, but oh well. So anyway, bottom line is that we budgeted for 2,003.3. We ended up with 1,000,000.6. And that is year after year because we overstate a little bit in brownfields because we not sure how it's gonna, you know, play out every year. Projects come, we don't know if they're coming, in what capacity, how big they are. So we just take this general estimate and budget for it, and then see what will happen. So you see over here is we budgeted for 761 of income, and then we ended up doing work only for this amount, for 268,000. So, but it's not that we, you know, lost some jobs or anything. It's just how reality, actual jobs pan out for that year. Anybody have any questions?
Nessa, is it all Zoom or do they ever come into the office?
Both. They have field work when they have to come to our office. They
Okay.
want to see that we are real, that we are actually exist.
Yeah, they were here for a few days.
2 days.
Yeah.
Yep. 2.5. Yep. That's it. Anybody have any questions?
I don't see any questions. I also want to point out that they found no material deficiencies or material weaknesses or significant deficiencies. Good thing that is different from when you started in ESSA. So I know you worked with that over the past
Yeah.
how many, 5
Absolutely.
years? Where, where to get to this point where we are, that means our internal controls are good. We can
Yeah.
spot, we're doing our best and putting, best practices into place for spotting any
Right.
issues or fraud or things like that. So,
Right.
and we're we're doing a good job as far as, accurately stating our financials. So, that's what I always look for is in the last letter. So I think those are all good signs, and we can feel assured that things are going well. Anne?
I just wanted to reiterate that point. That was a major discussion point in the finance meeting, how impressive it was that there were no issues. When I've looked at audit reports, like for a particular town I might know well, there have always been issues. So I think it says a lot about all the effort that's gone into really keeping things in shape. And that's just
Well, thank you. Yeah, thank you. I also would like to recognize Chris's effort for creating the budget. Yeah, because it's all his efforts getting those programmatic, grants and agreements and everything. Yeah.
Great. Any other questions? I don't see any with that. Thank you for presenting, Inessa. I would entertain a motion. We're not going to approve or do it. We're just going to accept it, right? Because we don't have any expertise. So I'd entertain a motion to accept our FY 2024 audit. Thank you, Anne. Ms. Treasurer, I appreciate that. Second from Bonnie. Awesome. All right. Any other?
So
comments?
this will go to full commission when we meet, right? For the full commission. So let's don't forget to provide that to the meeting.
Right, we're going to accept the audits here, accept the audit here today, but the full commission won't need to accept the audit, but they'll be made.
Just to view it. Yep. And I also wanted to mention that because we received this, now I'm working on 2026 indirect rate proposal. So this is what's going on right now. Yeah.
All right. Any other questions or comments for Inessa about the FY24 audit before we take a vote? All right, hearing and seeing none, all those in favor of accepting the FY24 audit, raise your hand or say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Jim, you got it in there. Perfect. So everyone voted, it's unanimous to accept our 2024 audit, with our thanks to Inessa and Chris for doing a great job on that. I know that's a heavy lift every year.
Thank you.
All right. With that, you're welcome to stay, Inessa, or not.
I would like to stay a little bit just for the brownfields, just to get a picture of what's going on.
Sounds good.
And then I'll get off.
You could say the whole time. All right, with that, we'll move on to our next item of business, which is our brownfields funding approval. And Sue Westa, thanks for being here tonight. There was a 2-page summary in our packet. Thanks for drafting that. And just I'll give a quick intro before you could speak further to it, Sue, and answer any questions. But this relates to the train station in Rockingham, and I'll be looking for an approval at the end of this discussion. Well, maybe I'll just entertain a motion now. I'll entertain a motion to approve a total of $869,674 of cleanup funds, $732,174 as a grant, and $137,500 as a loan, with a 2% interest rate and a 10-year term. So, all right, I'll make that motion as chair of the Brownfields Committee. Do I have a second? Thank you, Anne. Second by Anne. So I'll move on to discussion, and let Sue do that. And Bonnie, I'm assuming you're going to recuse yourself.
Yep.
As a select board member of Rockingham. Okay.
Yep. And Bonnie's also on the Brownfields Committee. and had to do the same thing there. But she has been hopeful, you know, having her input and insight into the project has been good. This is a huge project for the town, something they've been working out for a long time. And you may recall 2 years ago, you approved $300,000 in cleanup funding, but that was just for asbestos and lead abatement. And since that time, additional assessment was conducted. That was sort of going on simultaneously, but they found more vapor intrusion issues as a result of that additional assessment, and that's where the additional funds have come into play. Since this time, the town has also purchased the building, and they have put in a long-term lease on the property under and just immediately surrounding the building. They have received a significant amount of funding from other sources as well, 1.8 million from Senator Sanders. They've designated some of their own funding and received a Northern Borders grant and some other funding from the state as well. So they see this as an important gateway project to the island. They also, you know, value, I think, the transportation related because there's not only the train station, but the bus stops there. And they're hoping that there will be a commercial component in part of the building, but that sort of has yet to be seen. In the meantime, they're ready to go now. Brattleboro Savings and Loan gave the thumbs up to this funding. And now we just need approval for you. And I have a draft cooperative agreement, grant loan agreement, already out to EPA for their review, because they would like to start construction this summer, I believe. Any questions?
That's a good summary, Sue. Thank you. Thank you. Any questions? Yep, Stephen?
Now, in terms of the memo that you presented at just paragraph before background, the committee that approved this was the Brownfield Steering Committee, right? Is that correct?
They approve this current round of funding, yes.
We didn't approve it. We're making the recommendation for this board to approve it, right? Only this board, because it's a loan grant combo, only this board can enter into such an agreement. So we didn't approve it. The steering committee is making the recommendation to the executive board.
Right. So the committee's
Right.
making the recommendation, then how can I say, the legal or the financial side has to be approved by the executive board. Does it then have to be approved by the full commission?
No, we are acting on behalf of the full commission as the executive board.
It was, just from the memo, it was a little unclear to me what the executive committee was approving, because it was not clear of the relationship between Brownfields and the executive committee. So a little confusing. So that none of the committees have the authority to approve things for Wyndham Regional Commission. It's the executive board. Is that correct?
That's correct. That's correct. So that's the process is, just to
Yeah.
reiterate and make clear for everybody, the committee, in this case, it's the Brownfields Committee, did a detailed review, made a recommendation. We did have underwriting done by a third party, by BS&L.
Yes.
And then that was a caveat of the recommendation by the Brownfield Steering Committee. And then anything that needs it would be a loan or a contract that needs signature would come either to the executive board or to full commission for its approval.
Yes. Thank you very much.
Any other questions, including any process questions? All right, hearing and seeing none, all those in favor of the grant loan combo as moved, raise your hand or say aye. Thank you, Jim. Hands down, Bonnie recused herself. That makes it a unanimous vote. So it's approved. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We're glad we could help, Bonnie. Great project for Rockingham.
We needed the help. Oh, boy.
Now you have to go do it, Bonnie. That's the harder part.
know, yeah.
All right. Thanks so much for being here, Sue. Again,
Okay,
here,
thanks.
now it's up to you.
Yeah, good to see everyone. I think
Thank
I'll head
you.
out.
Take care.
Bye.
Thank y'all.
Bye-bye.
And next on our agenda is our, we, at the last full commission meeting, we proposed a July 19th full commission meeting relating to the approval of the regional plan. So we wanted to make sure we can actually get quorum. I know Chris and Ashley have been sitting around polls and calling people who are unresponsive. I know Ashley's been doing that for the past week, and I think she got to everybody. So
Everybody who reliably returns calls, yes.
so I'll let Chris present that.
So I emailed poll data to everybody too, if you want to look at your email accounts. But long story short, so we need to, in order to have to ultimately vote on starting from the beginning. So at the full commission meeting, it was agreed that we would, by the full commission, that we would attempt to adopt the regional plan update on July 29th. And staff said that we would poll commissioners to make sure that commissioners can commit to being there so that we don't have, we can minimize any surprises. We, per statute and per our bylaws, a quorum of 2/3 of all town appointed commissioners, so that excludes citizen interest commissioners, have to be present to vote. They don't have to, a majority can pass it, but a 2/3 majority has to be there. And so we sent around a poll to commissioners, and hopefully you saw it and answered it. It says, can you commit to a full commission meeting on July 29th? And we have had 36 respondents say yes. We needed 26. So in theory, we have 10 extras. That's awesome. 9 said no. So that's a pretty reasonable buffer. And before I get into the whole in-person versus Zoom versus hybrid, if you guys are assuming you guys are okay with this poll response and you're okay with going forward on the 29th, what I'm going to ask Ashley to do is go ahead and send out an Outlook calendar invitation, so that those who use Outlook calendars can go ahead and put that on our calendar. We're going to do everything we can to make sure that date is now inked in, that July 29th, 6 o'clock, be there, be square. We'll do it because as Gabby is, and I don't know how many of you have been through this before, but I know Gabby, you went through it with our regional plan update, not the readoption, but I think you were there for that. It was very exciting I had people on, we had multiple phones going, and this was pre-Zoom. It was exciting right up to the last minute. So I want to avoid that as much as I can. So that's where we're at. And then we also asked if you can participate in the July 29th full commission meeting, please select your meeting preference. We asked in person, via Zoom, and no preference. So 15 said they preferred in person, 15 said they preferred via Zoom, and 17 said they had no preference. Now, Gabby, I'll let you handle this discussion however you want to handle it. But one thing I'll just note is if we have a hybrid meeting, the only thing I would ask of the executive board is ponder our control over the ability to conduct a hybrid meeting. So if we're meeting in person someplace, I want control over that Wi-Fi system so that, we're not there and it's down and I can't get into the locked room where I have to reset a router or something like that. Because I just don't, if we fail on the connectivity issue for some reason, we basically have to scrap the meeting. So that's not a threat or anything. I'm just saying when we move out of our office space, or frankly my home space, if I was doing it from home, but I'll be here in the office. If we were doing like our normal, theoretically, this is a hybrid meeting right now. At least I have responsibility and theoretically control of our Wi-Fi system. But if we're in Newbrook Fire or Townsend Town Hall or something like that, I don't have that control. So, it's just a concern I have, and it may be overblown, but, but we'll do whatever, of course, whatever you guys want to do. But that's just a technology concern I have about, trying to do a hybrid meeting in a location that's not our office.
Yeah, Anne, go ahead.
I was just asking, can you hold it in the, in your offices? Is there any way to arrange the space so that you could?
I mean, we could have 15 people in the room. It'd be a little crowded, but we could have 15 people in the room.
Yeah, I mean, I was sort of feeling like there wasn't a huge, like, oh my gosh. Well, so there's a couple things I was thinking. A, there wasn't a huge, oh my gosh, I'm in person. Most of people preferred Zoom or had no preference. We need to have as many people as we can so we get quorum. And my concern is that people have the best of intentions that they want to go in person, but they end up just getting, things happen, right? Like just things get in the way in life. And a lot of people have the best of intentions. And I've run into this in a different, actually like at DV Fiber when everybody wanted, to have an in-person meeting and then we could barely get quorum to show up. So I would think it's easiest for people to go onto Zoom if they can and call it a hybrid meeting. Like if people want to show up in person to our office, just like normal, people can show up. And if it really is 15 people, they can fit in the room. I suspect, it wouldn't be 15, it would be somewhere, on the order of maybe 10 who really wanted to do it. And then have an in-person meeting either in our annual meeting or in October where we can socialize, right? Like, and not have a lot of business like we usually do, and then engage people in person that way at a later time. But this is, we actually need to have a vote and we need to have people. And Chris, you need to be by the phone in case something happens, in case we need to, I feel like it's just safest that we have our regular hybrid, like, this is a regular hybrid meeting. People are totally fine showing up in person. So that's sort of that's how I feel about it.
Yeah, and then to that point, Gabby, I would, even for our annual meeting, because that's where we're voting on budget, I would prefer that not be the celebratory in-person meeting, but more like we've been doing kind of October or something. Last year we did May, I think, with kind of our coming out of the pandemic in-person meeting. But what I would recommend is like in October on a pleasant, it'll be the end of the month, have a gathering at the Union Hall or someplace, someplace central to or wherever, and do like the heavy hors d'oeuvres again and all, and have a guest speaker, but really not plan on conducting business apart from minutes approval. Just again, for that same connectivity and kind of making the business conduct as fail safe as possible. I'm not refuting you, Gabby. I'm just stating my thoughts as a director.
Yeah, it's a discussion. That's why you're here.
I totally agree. I completely agree.
Yeah, Steve?
I echo that too, because it's all about expectations. When people say, I want to be in an in-person meeting, they don't really want to just take a chair in your office and sit there next to the table and then say, vote to adjourn and go home. They want to, I think they have this touchy-feely sort of good vibe about getting together because we never see each other. So we should deal into that, but deal into it almost exclusively at the meeting in October, and just acknowledge that that's a time that we'll get together and talk about things that we want to talk about, not things that are dictated by the state or by the budget or something else. So I don't think we have to reject this. We just have to move it, because there's not a snowball's chance that we're going to make quorum with people saying they want to be in person. It's just not going to happen. And I remember some meeting we were in where we all had to get on the phone and call people from our towns and say, get on the phone, we're going to vote right now. It was like total chaos. So to avoid that, I think we have to give it the most we can, and that's the most control.
Any other thoughts? Or anyone is like, we really need an in-person meeting for this vote? I'm always give people the path of least resistance to make it easiest as possible. Okay, yes, Stephen.
I had assumed from the questionnaire that it was simply a hybrid meeting, that some people would show up and other people would be on the Zoom board. And it would be possibly in the office, but I didn't assume that it was like October meeting. I just assumed it was the possibility that if people wanted to come by the office for the meeting, they could, unless, 40 people showed up, which you'd be delighted about, but it'd be a bit of a squeeze in the office. I didn't have any really expectations when I was asked if it was in person or Zoom. I assumed in person would yield a hybrid meeting. So
The,
I'm in agreement with Chris in terms of the importance of it and being able to manage the technology. I had assumed it would be in the office and not a big deal, and just a hybrid meeting.
well, the way it was posited during the full commission meeting by Eric Stevens was kind of more like an October meeting, like everybody gets together. We have food. We even when he replied to Ashley, he said, I'm looking forward to seeing everybody in person and there being food. So that's kind of what prompted all this.
Okay.
So that's why, and so we could still, I don't know, I'm happy to, get out some cheese and crackers here at the office if enough people say, hey, I'm absolutely coming in. But Stephen, that's the reason why I just kind of wanted to nail down what the expectation was.
Yeah, I think that's what the impetus for this was, the request at full commission that we have a big in-person gathering at our July 29th meeting. And I think we wanted to take everyone's temperature to see if that was how everyone was feeling. And it looks like from their poll results, it's not. And that we should just go with the regular meeting and then have an in-person meeting, but just do it not at this time. So I think we're all in agreement with this. So I don't think we need a vote, but thank you for the discussion. And we'll follow up a real in-person meeting where you have to come. No, not really, because it all has to be hybrid, but legally.
And just related to that, Gabby, so the idea for the remainder of the year, Gabby had messaged me about the full commission meetings. We had originally posited that we would have a June meeting and not a July one, but now because of the timing of the regional plan update, the idea is to have our next full commission meeting. It'd be the July 29th meeting, where you would approve the where the commissioners will vote on the regional plan. Then we have our August business meeting where the commissioners would vote on the coming year's budget, elect officers, etc. Just a regular meeting. And then let's see, that would bring us to, I think that brings us to 5 meetings. We have to have a minimum of 6. So obviously we can have more than that. We had thought about in September presenting to commissioners the outreach we're going to be doing to towns with doing the future land use map update. So we would actually probably begin meeting with towns, but just to kind of give you guys an idea about the more detailed discussions we'll be having about these housing allocations that the Home Act required, and the nature of the conversations we're going to be having with towns about identifying those growth areas. So thought we'd have Matt back, not trying to make it all Matt all the time, but oh great, now my battery's dying. I'll fix that. There we go. So and then October have the gathering and maybe find a guest speaker. We could also theoretically do that in September too, but we have plenty of time to figure that out. But I guess I just want to kind of do a temperature check if you guys are okay with that approach.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Gabby, you and I didn't get to have our phone call, but I mean, are you okay with that?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Okay. All right. That's all on the, so thank you all very much for that. I appreciate your understanding of the need to make sure we get the business done.
Yes, Steve Lemke.
Chris, how are you going to answer the people? How are you going to answer everybody who surveyed and said one thing, who were surveyed and said one thing or another.
We're just gonna
Were you-
reply to everybody, say, hey, exec board, reviewed the poll results. It was basically split between, we had 50, I'll just provide the poll results. 15 said in person preference, 15 said remote, and 17 said no preference. Therefore, executive board decided that in order to ensure a smooth and orderly meeting, in order to cast a vote, that we're going to hold a normal hybrid meeting. People are welcome to come to the office per usual if they like. And please let Chris, if you intend to come to the office, if y'all are okay, I won't necessarily offer food, but if it looks like we've got some kind of, I don't know, like 10 people or something, I'll get cookies and cheese or something like that. But typically it's the only time we've had somebody come into the office since we've had to, required to have that physical location has been Lynette Hamilton. And as a former dairy farmer, she may be tired of cheese, so I'll think of something else.
But are you going to mention anything about the October meeting being a more collegial?
Sure, I'll say we can plan that. The other stipulation on that is, I'm assuming we're going to be in an okay budget position to do that because that's in the new fiscal year.
Yep.
Sorry, I just got a weird it's fun operating off of two computers. I just had a weird thing, and you guys disappeared for a minute. It scared the heck out of me. So anyway, yes, I'll let them know that the assumption is we'll have an October meeting with a guest speaker at heavy orders, as we have in the past, budget allowing. Is that okay?
I think it's good to acknowledge the two things: the critical nature of the quorum and the goodwill that was that Eric put forth by getting together. So
sure.
Good.
And one thing I'll just note for those of you who are relatively new, when I first came here, we were still trying to hold full commission meetings all around the region. And so, but we actually had to quit doing that because people just weren't showing up. And frankly, a lot of that was the distance that was required to travel, but also, as you've heard me probably mention before, we just had because of age, a lot of commissioners just couldn't drive anymore. And my last straw was there was a commissioner who, because we said we really need you there to vote on something, a commissioner with Alzheimer's came to a meeting and didn't know how to get back home. And that was my last straw. It's like, why are we doing this if we don't have to do this? So let's just come up with it was terrifying. I mean, it wasn't my decision. I didn't tell the commission what to do, but I told the exec board at the time, look, this is getting to be almost dangerous by trying to force people onto the roads and all when they don't need to be. So that was before all of your all's time, I think, but it scared the hell out of me. So that's why, but for commissioners like Eric, who've been around for a very long time, those were kind of good old days, especially when we would, when a lot of commissioners just loved being with each other. They had kind of grown up with each other almost as commissioners, and it was just kind of a different era, and it would be awesome if we could go back to that, but I think the practical reality is we just can't. But to Eric's point, I mean there was just a different vibe than what we have now, but I think we're just in a different time and place now. Okay.
Yep, Stephen, Jake.
One of the other features that happened at the last October meeting, and I find very beneficial, there was a real opportunity for commissioners to meet the staff and to have discussions with the staff, either about how things, or this is the committee we're working on, and you mentioned this, I'd like to, and one of the things that has happened, I think, over the last few years is there's more distance between the commissioners and the staff. And when I started and it was possible to drop by the office, I intentionally dropped by the office because I had questions to talk with, and it built a relationship with staff that was very productive for getting work done for the town. So one of the things I find missing in particular is contact with the staff.
All right. I think we'll just continue to, have these discussions as we figure out how to best engage commissioners. Honestly, as we evolve and sort of, figure out how to best run the organization as it evolves over time. And I think,
Well,
yeah.
Just not to take much, I would just ask, for example, Halifax now
Guys,
has.
I don't know if you can hear me. You're not gonna believe this. Now my other computer, the sound has quit working.
Oh,
I don't
no.
know what in the heck is going on. I'm gonna shut down my other computer. Bear with me here 1 second. Sorry about this. I have no idea what's going on. This is surreal.
We can hear you, Chris.
What's odd is this computer I'm using is not even attached to my monitor, but my mouse is moving on the monitor. I don't know what has transpired. And I can't actually get my mouse back on the computer. This is so
But you can
weird.
hear
I
us.
have no idea. Somebody say something again?
Yeah, can you hear us? Can you hear us?
Okay.
Anything?
Gabby, you are host. I'm gonna log out and log back in again. I'll be right back. Sorry about this.
That's okay.
Time to reboot the computers.
Find a new IT person.
All right, we'll give him another minute. But if there's anything else you want to say, Stephen, yeah. You were in the middle of saying something, Stephen?
I was just gonna say, one of the things that occurred to me is Halifax has a new commissioner. And I thought it would be beneficial at some point to just, to come with him, to go with him to the office, drop in and just introduce him to whichever staff is about without interfering in their schedule, but just so he knows who is who. Because it seems to me there needs to be a connection between the commissioners and the staff at the commission.
Mhm.
Correct me if I am, but it seems a useful relationship to have.
I have to say, in my case, I got to know the staff through different projects that the town was working on and different people that we worked with. So it felt organic over time. Working with Sue and working with Alyssa.
Yes,
Yeah,
Or as you work, as you work more and more in the various, your capacity as a commissioner, I met more and more
right.
staff people.
The
So
one,
I think it is good to have it in person and, hopefully that annual meeting will at least trigger recognition.
the one example I was thinking of is I was working with, at the time,
And
John,
1 second, Stephen, I just want to make sure, can you hear us, Chris?
Yeah.
Okay.
I was working with John Bennett on town plans and other things. And it was through dropping in that I got a chance to meet Jeff Nugent, who generally I wouldn't have had much contact with. And it turned out to be a very useful discussion because I found out not only what Jeff was doing, but how he did it, and that he was open to requests from the town. And then when I was working discussing it in the town, it just made things easier at the time. But
Yep.
old-fashioned.
I think this is something we'll struggle. It's going to be something we struggle with on a long-term basis to figure out how to best make connections. We lost Steve Lemke, so I want to make sure that we move along with our agenda because we are over time. So I think we'll wrap up. I think Chris has direction for us from the poll results. We will be having, I think, there's been emphasis about person-to-person meetings, so we'll obviously work to have that in October. Moving on to committee appointments, there were none, unless I was wrong, Chris. You can virtually kick me.
Nope.
And then we'll move on to the executive director's report.
So Anessa and I have already begun looking at, we've solicited from staff all projects that everybody is aware of. So we're basically we're going to start beginning kind of looking at our FY 2026 budget, because if you may recall, and he's fully aware of this, Anand, we hired on a conditional status. Basically, we've hired him through this current fiscal year, and conditioning his continued employment on the availability of funds. I want to go ahead and let him know as soon as possible if it looks like we're going to be able to keep him in the budget. And so he knows I'm also waiting for the legislature to pass a budget. Right now, we're in a good position in that budget, but anything could happen. So, but right now things are looking good, but he has to renew his lease by June 30th. So I may not have a budget. I at least want to know if we're in safe territory, to keep him on. He's been fantastic, and we really need more. Right now, we are really stacked heavily with senior staff. We need a new generation of staff coming in. So I'd really like to hold on to him if at all possible. So right now, like I say, it's looking good, but I want to run some hard numbers based on what we actually know, as opposed to what we might guess. And of course, I'm assuming usually I have we have a fairly generous soft revenue allowance. Well, the assumption being that we're probably going to have more funding coming in than expected, because that's been the trend, but I don't want to bank on that this time around. I want to be very lean. So anyway, just want to let you know that we're already thinking about it. So we'll have a budget to you maybe probably sooner rather than later. I don't know, Ann, that it's going to necessitate any. We usually like to run this by the budget by the finance committee before we run it by the executive board. I don't know that we're necessarily going to need like a special meeting, but I'll let everybody know. Also, I am on, the only time that I could book a vacation was during the June regular meeting of the June executive board week. And right now, the only business item that you have for that meeting would be Winhall Town Plan approval, and Matt Bockler would run the meeting. So I won't be there. I hope that's okay. I'm going to be in Wellfleet in a Fortress of Solitude, eating seafood and fishing with my wife and dog. But I hope that's okay. If anybody has concerns about that, let me know and I'll try to join. Honestly, I just don't know the connectivity down there. When we were in Truro last year, we had the worst DSL I've ever experienced. It was kind of nice to be isolated, but I don't want to. But otherwise, I might have to find a library or something. But let me know if you have concerns about that, either now or later on. But right now, I think Matt can cover the bases. Normally, I'd ask Sue to do it, but since Matt has the business before the exec board, he'll do it as senior planner rather than have two staff. Sue come on as associate director. Is that okay? Any concerns right now about that?
No,
That sounds good.
Okay.
Go off, enjoy your vacation, and definitely not try to find Wi-Fi.
Okay. And then I'll be sharing with everybody. We as you may recall, we had an agreement with the Conway School for Landscape Design. That's a graduate school down in Northampton, used to be in Conway. We had a contract with them to develop an outdoor recreation inventory and analysis, and they did a fantastic job. It's very substantive, and the report looks beautiful. It is a tome, but a very useful tome. So I'll be sharing that with everybody. But the idea was to develop this inventory and analysis so that if we can ever get the funding, develop an outdoor recreation economy plan. So really glad to have that foundation. And I think because we have that foundation, that detailed inventory now, that alone will be very useful. But I think it'll help us maybe find like Northern Border Regional Commission or some other funding to do that economic plan. Also, just so you're aware, I was asked to speak before the National Academy of Sciences last week. They had a panel on flooding in North Carolina and California. They also wanted input from our experience in Vermont, because we have a lot of it. So I basically presented what's happened in 23, 24, statistics, information about the storms. But what I really wanted to present was the capacity challenges to address adaptation resilience at our hyper-local level, not only in Vermont, but throughout New England. So did that. And then the week before I presented, I was on a panel where at the Northeast Association of Fish and Wildlife Agencies, also talking about a similar thing. I'm chair of the Forest State Connect River Watershed Partnership. You may recall that there was a related Connect River Watershed Partnership Act that's going to get reintroduced next week, I think it is. And all the Vermont delegations signed on. But and next week, the Connect River Watershed Partnership is having a retreat at Grafton Inn. It's going to be people from all four Connecticut River watershed states. And Ann, you may be interested to know, part of the discussion is how to engage New York. It's physically a little challenging. Strategically, it'd be good to have some of those red districts on Long Island, but also, right, ultimately, the Long Island Sound TMDL for nitrogen is going to be important. But also ultimately the sound is ultimately the recipient of everything we send downstream. So there are all kinds of very practical reasons, not just political, to engage with New York, but physically is a challenge, especially when we meet in person, because as you all know, it's not easy just to get across Long Island Sound and get to, like, you know, the middle of the watershed to have a discussion. Anyway, so that's going to be part of the discussion, but already have had some good meetings with folk in New York as well. Last but not least, in spite of all the federal funding situation, I've not been sugarcoating anything with staff, but just basically keeping them up to date, because I know I've been in a situation where not knowing what's going on is worse than kind of, just kind of be cautious, be aware. So just have been keeping everybody in the loop. Our biggest exposure right now is just not knowing if the emergency management planning funding is going to continue. And that's not just us. Right now, the state doesn't even know, and that grant funds like 90% of their operations. So in the scheme of things, we would kind of be the least of the worry if that funding doesn't come through, because the state would have to figure out how do we fund Vermont emergency management. But in that case too, the idea would be like shift Alyssa more to like regional, municipal planning, regional planning, other things. But I'm just being very candid with folk, just so nobody is afraid, frankly. Be aware. But right now there are, the potential for cuts or other rescissions or other things, of course exists. But right now, there are no particular, there is no obvious, cliff that we're going to drop off or anything. So I just want to let y'all know, in case you're wondering about morale. I think morale is actually quite good. And I hope y'all are okay with that approach. Like I say, I just feel like good open communication and candor is important when you have these kind of uncertain times. I've been in an organization where we didn't know anything until the day of, when we were all kind of like, hey, you're going to be let go. And I'd rather have had a little bit of knowledge. The worst case for me was that I was the one who they were going to keep. And so everybody else was going to go, and like, that doesn't feel good. So, but anyway, so that's all I've got.
All right.
Any
That all
questions?
sounds good. Yeah, Anne?
Chris, if there's anyone on Long Island that you need introductions to, I know a heck of a lot of them.
Great, that'd be awesome. Will do, Ann. And just so y'all know, this partnership is quite, it's U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. It's multiple state agencies, NGOs. I've brought in the regional planning commissions into it. So it's really broad partnership. So, Ann, especially from the work that you did, because you've got not only the state level people there, but also the county level people, be really important.
All right. Any other questions for Chris?
And are y'all okay with the approach? I mean, feel free to speak up. You're not going to hurt my feelings if you feel like I'm taking the wrong approach or something. I appreciate the advice. So, okay.
I think silence is assent or agreement. So we're good. All right, Stephen?
Yeah, Gabby, could I ask you a question, which is, I was surprised there are no appointments.
No.
Is there, because I know Pete from Halifax is a new commissioner. I know he filled out paperwork and I don't think he's been appointed to committees yet. So I'm just a little puzzled about the fact that there were no committee appointments yet.
We'll check with Ashley, but I expect it's not infrequent that, we don't have committee appointments, and certainly Ashley keeps track of the paperwork and then sends it on to us once she has it. So she might have been caught up with calling
And-
Commissioner to speak.
And remember, it's a different dynamic now because we don't have like natural resources community. We don't have, it's more like nominating, finance, other things. And it'd be hard for a new commissioner, apart from potentially transportation, to serve on the more business related committees. So, so we can talk, more about how you guys want to handle that outreach. For right now, I think that's really kind of more and Gabby and others, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's going to be more the foray kind of the of you guys figuring out how do you want to flesh out, the more business related, the standing committees we have in our bylaws.
Right. Well, the interest was not in the business part, it was in transportation and project review.
So we'll check with Ashley on that.
Okay. No, thank you.
Yeah, no, I didn't see that come through, so we'll just check in with her. All right, moving on, committee chair reports, anything that you want to bring as a committee chair to this board? Hearing and seeing none. I didn't see any action items, but I know that Steve Lemke and I are meeting, and then maybe Chris, if you could stay on after this meeting just to touch base with us. But Steve Lemke, as chair of the nominating committee, is going to start reaching out to commissioners to try to fill the seats, the vacant seats we have. So again, Bonnie made a recommendation, but if anyone has recommendations about who might be good executive board members, please, we're working on it, so please reach out to us, either myself or Chris or Steve Lemke. All right. With that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn. Thank you, Anne. Do I have a second? Thank you. Bonnie and Steve, it was tie. Non-debatable motion. Everyone in favor, raise your hand or say aye. All right, unanimous. We are adjourned at 7:20 p.m. Thanks all for your time, your discussion.
Thank you
But-
very much. Have a good
Yeah.
night.
You too, Chris and Steve, you can stay on. Thank you for attending, Jim. Hope you're feeling okay. Good.
Jim's had a couple late nights. He's on the nuclear decommissioning panel now, so we were both on a meeting till about 9 last night.
Oh, geez. And he sent you that email too, where he had vocal cord surgery, so he can't talk. That's why he was.
Yeah.
For another month. So
Oh, let me
anyway,
stop recording. Hold on one second.